So micro C or OS2 kernel, the tasks may be in one of the following stage. So these are the two examples you can consider. So when it comes to the process management, again, you know that how the process management is going to happen. Creation of the process, then setting up of the memory space for the process. First, you need to create the process. Once you create the process, you need to set up the memory space for the process. And then once the memory space is allocated for that particular process, the next step is loading that process code into the memory space. So whatever the code you want to execute, that process code should be loaded into the memory space. Then you have to allocate the system resources. The next step is you need to allocate the system resources in the sense CPU, any other resources which it requires. Then setting up a process control block, that is PCB. Then the final state is process termination or deletion. So when the process is completed, you have to go for the termination process. So these are the steps which you need to follow in the process management. One is the creation, next setting up the memory, third is loading the process code into the memory, next allocating the system resources, next setting up a process control block, then last is process termination. So next concept is threads. So now what do you mean by thread is, it's a primitive that can execute the code. So process is your program in execution. So that process can be divided into threads. So that is nothing but a thread. So a thread is known as a lightweight process. So it is a single sequential flow of control within a process. It is to a particular process, you are going to create a thread. So that thread will be executing in a sequential flow of control, and it is a lightweight process. So a process can have many threads of execution. So a single process, whatever you want to execute, that can be divided into many threads for execution purpose. So different threads which are part of process share the same address space. So you need to remember this, different threads. So a process can be divided into threads, but that threads, different threads which are part of a particular process, it has to share the same address space. That means they share the same data memory, code memory, and heap memory area, which is allocated for that particular process. So in the beginning, when you create a process, memory will be allocated for the process. So in that memory, you will be available with data memory, code memory, and stack memory, all those things. So all those memory part will be shared for all the threads which are created under that particular process. So threads maintain their own thread status. So threads are going to maintain their own thread status like CPU, register values, program counter, and stack. So memory model of the process and its associated threads is given in the next diagram. You can see here. So this is stack memory for the process. So you'll be allocated with stack memory for the process. So for thread, it maintains different stack memory for different threads. So stack memory for thread 1, stack memory for thread 2. So but this data memory for process and code memory for process is going to be shared by all the threads which are created for this particular process. So only the stack memory, the thread is going to maintain separately. Stack memory for thread 1, stack memory for thread 2. But data memory and code memory is going to be a shared one for the memory organization of a process as well as and its threads. A process can create threads, or it is going to be divided into many number of threads. So when it comes for the concept of multi-threading, a process or task in embedded application may be like complex or lengthy one. So a process whichever you are going to choose for execution in an embedded application, it may be very complex or lengthy. It can be lengthy in and one of it may contain various sub operations. So it may contain various sub operations. So if all the sub operations are executed in sequence, the CPU utilization may not be efficient. So you know that. So you have a very complex or lengthy task need to be completed, and you want to execute that in the sequential manner, one after the other. So if you are waiting till the completion of that process is over, it takes so much of time and it is not an efficient utilization of your CPU. So if you go with the execution of sequential manner, so you will be having various sub operations need to be performed. So when you go with this multi-threading or use of this multi-threads to execute a process, it brings the following advantages. What are the advantages, are the facilities you are going to get with this multi-threading concept? So one is better memory utilization. So multiple threads of the same process share the address space for data memory. So in that regard, you will be able to utilize your memory in a better way. And then since the process is split into different threads, when one thread enters a wait state, the CPU can be utilized by other threads of the process that do not require the event. So there are, the process is divided into threads. Each thread will be executing its own task. So once one of the thread enters into the wait state, that CPU becomes free. So that CPU can be utilized by other threads of the same process, which do not require that particular event where the other thread is waiting. So it makes the CPU utilization efficient. So third advantage is efficient CPU utilization. So when you are running or executing your tasks using the thread, each task will be doing its own task or the process which will be running. So that is the concept of multi-threading, which you will be using in the operating system. So this is the example of the diagram you can see here for multi-threading. So you have a task or process, you have code memory, data memory. For each task, a code memory, data memory and stack memory will be allocated. So this code memory and data memory is shared by all the threads. So this task or particular process may create 3 threads, thread 1, thread 2, thread 3. So that means this is a sub operation, this is another sub operation, this is another sub operation. So each thread, thread 1, thread 2, thread 3, it shares code and data memory of the same process where the memory is allocated, but it makes use of different stack memory here, and its own local registers will be used. So this is an example of multi-threading, the concept of multi-threading. So this is the actual process or the main task which you need to execute, and this same task is being divided into 3 parts, subsections. So that is thread 1, thread 2 and thread 3. So these 3 threads are going to be executed concurrently, and then these 3 threads are going to use its own stack kind of thing. It divides the stack into its own, and it makes use of its own registers or variables, but it makes use of the shared code and data memory. So this is the concept of multi-threading which you are going to use. So a same single process is going to be divided into different n number of threads. So when it comes for the thread standards, it deals with the different standards available for thread creation and management. So whenever you write the program or project, you will be available with different standards to use these threads. So for available for thread creation and management. So these standards are utilized by operating system for thread creation and management. So it's a set of thread class libraries. So you're going to use it as a class of libraries. So the commonly available thread class libraries are POSIX, Win32 and Java threads. So I think you will be aware of all this Java kind of thing. You are learning Java also. So POSIX threads, Win32 and then Java threads. So these are the commonly available thread class libraries. Any one you can use for creating the threads. So when it comes for the POSIX, it stands for Portable Operating System Interface. So it is Portable Operating System Interface. So POSIX standard library for thread creation and management is pthreads. So what is the standard library used for thread creation and management under POSIX? That means POSIX, it is nothing but pthreads. So you need to use the notations as it is. You should not change that. This is pthreads is the library for creating the thread and managing your thread. So pthreads library, it defines the set of POSIX thread creation and management functions in C language. So it is going to be defining the set of set for the thread creation and management functions in C language. So when it comes for the basic thing, the thread creation. So how the thread creation is going to happen. This is the format or the syntax which you need to use for creating the thread in POSIX. So this is int pthread underscore create. This is the name of the thread you are creating. Then this is pthread underscore t star new thread ID. Then this is a format attributes you are going to use, and this is a start function for which the function you are going to start, and then these are the arguments. So this is going to be used for creating a new thread. It creates a new thread for running the function start function. So it wants to run the function start function. This is the name of the function, and it is going to create a new thread. So this is the syntax which is used in POSIX, under POSIX. So for creating a new thread. So it creates a new thread for running the function start function. So here pthread underscore t. So the first argument what you are seeing here, pthread underscore t is the handle to the newly created. So this is the handler for the newly created thread, and then pthread underscore attr underscore t, it is the data type for holding the thread attributes. So this one, so this is the data type for holding the thread attributes, whatever the attributes related to the thread. So that threads will be used with the data type of this pthread that underscore attr underscore t. So this is going to create the new thread. So start function is nothing but it is the function the thread is going to execute. So this is the actual function the thread is going to execute. So in your process, you will be having n number of functions. One function for one single function, you have created this particular thread. So this is the name of the function which this thread has to execute. And argument is nothing but the arguments for start function. So this argument will be used or utilized by this particular start function. So this function may require some arguments for execution. So that will be provided in this particular part, argument. So on successful creation of a pthread by using this pthread under create, it associates the TCB. So that thread creation block and all that will be associated. Your memory, stack memory, variables, registers, whatever is required for that. So that will be allocated for this particular unsuccessful creation of a thread. So you have another one. So int pthread underscore join. So it is going to be used for blocking or blocks the current thread and waits until the completion of the thread pointed by it. So whichever the thread it is running, it is going to block the current thread and waits until the completion of the thread pointed by it. So that is for that reason, this is going to be used in pthread underscore join, pthread underscore t, new thread. So you're going to initiate a new thread here. So it is going to block the currently executing thread and it is going to wait for the completion of the thread which is pointed to by it. So for that purpose, you are going to use this in pthread underscore join. So these are all the syntaxes, notations you need to practice. So how the threads are going to be used under POSIX. This is one of the standard which is going to be provided. So under POSIX, this is a method or the syntax which you need to use for creating the thread. So here is an example, one example you can see. So a program, so write a multi-threaded application to print hello, I am in main thread from the main thread and hello, I am in new thread 5 times each using the pthread create and pthread join POSIX primitives. So by making use of this pthread create and pthread join, so you need to write a application program or a multi-threaded application which prints the messages. So one message is hello, I am in main thread. So where your actual main thread begins, and then from the main thread, and then one more message you need to print hello, I am in new thread 5 times each you have to print. So this is the program or the code for this. So you can see here include pthread.h. This is the library you have to include. stdlib, stdio, all these things are for C language. You are creating here void star new thread. This is a function. So these are the argument void star thread underscore argument. This is the actual function. So where your actual thread need to be executed. So int I comma j, this is a loop you are using for printing the message for 5 times. This is a message you want to print. Hello, I am in a new thread. So this message need to be printed 5 times, and this is a it is a infinite loop which is used for introducing the delay and return null. So this is one part of the program. So this is your main. So your main starts here. So int I comma j. So it is checking if pthread underscore create and it is checking the thread block and all, if it is null, and whether new thread is created or not. So if all these things satisfies, like error in creating thread, if you are unable to create the thread, so you're going to print the message error in creating the thread, so return -1. So this is for just checking whether the thread is created or not. If the thread is not created, you are going to message or display the error message, error in creating the thread. Otherwise, so again you start a loop for 5 times. So you're printing hello, I am in main thread. Again you are introducing a delay loop, and then you're going to stop the current execution of the thread, and you're going to print the next whichever the pointed thread is there, that will be printed. So again if it is not happening, so if you are not able to stop or block the current execution of the thread, so again it is going to check whether it's a null value or not, then error in thread join, that message will be displayed. So that is one example program, so for writing using that pthread create and pthread join. So second type is Win32 threads. So this is also another type of, one second. This thing, threads are the threads supported by various versions of the Windows operating system. So Win32 application programming interface, that is API libraries, it provides a standard set of Win32 thread creation and management function. And also you have Java threads. This is the third type. So you'll be using Java in the Java language. So how the Java threads are going to be created. So you'll be writing the class my thread, extends thread, all these things. You're printing the message, and this is your main. You're creating new my thread. So in Java, I think it is very easy to create the threads. So you'll be having main. In that you have a method new my thread. So again dot start, it starts the thread function. So it runs that particular thread function. So it prints the message, whatever the message you are executing in that particular thread. So this is your class created, and this is your main class. Thread is your main class, and this is your subclass, which extends the functionalities of your thread. So you know Java better, you can understand how to create the threads in Java. So this is one example how the Java threads are going to be created. So there are 3 types. One is POSIX, the second one is Win32, and the third one is Java threads. So now when it comes for the thread preemption, so you might have learned many of the scheduling algorithms, preemptive, non-preemptive, all those things in the operating system. So you know the meaning of preemption. So thread preemption is the act of preempting the currently running thread. So preemption is nothing but temporarily interrupting a task which is being carried out by a system or computer system or operating system without requiring its cooperation, and running task at later time. So you are running some process or some program is in execution. You're just going to temporarily interrupt that particular task, whichever is being carried out, and later in some later stage, you may return or you may resume back that task, whatever you have halted or it is interrupted in the previous thing. So that is nothing but your preemption. So thread preemption ability is dependent on the operating system. So it is performed for sharing the CPU time along all the threads. So that means when a process is in execution and you have divided into threads, you have allocated or you have created some 2 or 3 threads. So one thread which is in execution holds the CPU for a long duration, and other 2 threads will not be getting that CPU from a long time. So that should not happen. So you're going to share the CPU time among all the threads. So for that reason, you halt the first thread operation and you give the CPU time or utilization for the second and third thread. So the execution switching among these threads are known as thread context switching. So you're going to halt the execution of first thread and you allocate the CPU for the second time, and you allocate some time duration for that. So once the time completes, you're going to give the CPU for the third one. So again, some time will be allocated for that. Once the time completes, again, it will come back to the thread one. So like that. So only one thread should not hold the CPU for long duration. So it has to switch to other threads also. So that is for that reason, the execution, this preemption is going to be utilized or used, and the switching among the threads are known as context switching. So you need to remember all these words. So when it comes to the types of the threads, you have user level threads and kernel level threads. So user level threads do not have kernel or operating system support, and they exist solely in the running process. So even if a process contains multiple user level threads, the OS treats it as a single thread and will not switch the execution among the different threads of it. So that is the kind of user level threads you are going to have. When it comes to the kernel or system level thread, so kernel level threads are individual units of execution which the operating system treats as separate threads. So here in the kernel level threads, so each thread is going to be treated as individual, as a separate thread. So the OS interrupts the execution to another kernel thread based on the scheduling policies implemented by the OS. So whatever the scheduling policies you are going to use, so based on that, it may switch the thread, like execution of thread from one to the other. So you may have you have two ways of binding threads. So like from many to one to one, or many to many models. These are like here, like many to one means many user level threads are mapped to a single kernel thread. So you can create many user level threads and they are mapped to a single kernel thread. So one to one means each user level thread is bonded to a kernel or system level thread. So one user level thread and one kernel level thread. So many to many means many user level threads are allowed to be mapped to many kernel level threads. So here you can have the difference between thread and process. So you may get this particular question, differentiate between thread and process. So thread is a single unit of execution and is part of the process. So always thread is a part of one's particular process and it is a single unit of execution. It performs only a single operation or single functionality. So it's a lightweight, always it will be a lightweight process. So it will not perform a huge task or complex task. So thread is a single unit of execution and it is a part of process. But when it comes to the process, it's a program in execution and it contains one or more number of threads. And a thread does not have its own data memory. It shares the data memory and heap memory with other threads of the same process. So in the beginning only we discussed thread, when it is created, a process creates a thread, 2 or 3 threads. So all threads will share the same data memory which the process is given or allocated. So with other threads of the same process. But when it comes to the process, it has its own code memory, data memory, and stack memory. So a thread cannot live independently. So a thread cannot live independently. It lives within the process. Always a thread is going to be associated with the process. It is not an independent entity. So always it will be associated with the process. The process contains at least one thread. So threads are very inexpensive to create. So because it's a lightweight process and easy to create, and it executes one single operation or task, whatever is allocated for it, it's an inexpensive thing to create. But processes are very expensive to create. It involves many operating system overhead, because a process means it is a complex task. So many operating system utilization or use resources controls need to be used. It's a overhead. Then context switching is inexpensive and fast. So context switching, that means from one thread execution to the other thread execution, it may jump or it may go very easily and in a fast manner. So that becomes easy. Context switching becomes easy in thread execution. But context switching is complex and involves a lot of operating system overhead and is comparatively slower when it comes to the process execution. So that is the reason each process is going to be creating different number of threads. So when it creates threads, the execution becomes faster. So this is the difference between thread and process. You can have the differentiation between the thread and the process. So we'll be using these two terms many times when we discuss operating system concepts and all the execution of programs like that. So multiprocessing and multitasking. So in the operating system context, these two words are very important: multiprocessing and multitasking. So it looks like little confusing and it is like similar or it is same kind of thing. So what exactly multiprocessing is? Multiprocessing describe the ability to execute multiple processes simultaneously. So you're going to have multiple processes which is going to be executed simultaneously. So that is nothing but multiprocessing. So systems which are capable of performing multiprocessing are known as multiprocessor systems. So you will be having multiple processors available in a system, and you will be able to execute multiple processes in that processors simultaneously. So that kind of systems are called as multiprocessor systems. So that is nothing but multiprocessing. When it comes to the multitasking, the ability of the operating system to hold multiple processes in memory. So ability of an operating system to hold multiple processes in memory and switch the processor, that is nothing but CPU, from executing one process to another process is known as multitasking. So whenever you are switching the execution from one process to the other process, and you're going to hold all these multiple processes are available in the memory, and the operating system is going to manage all these things, the switching of the execution of one processor to the another processor, all these things are nothing but multitasking. So multitasking involves the switching of CPU from executing one task to another. So switching of CPU from executing one task to another is called as multitasking. So this is two different terms and definitions you need to remember. So multiprocessing and multitasking. So the act of switching CPU among the process or changing the current execution context is known as context switching. So again, definition for context switching. So act of switching CPU among the process or changing the current execution context is known as context switching. So for the currently running process at the time of CPU switching is known as context saving. So context saving. So whatever the currently running process, you have a currently running process and you are switching that CPU from that process to the other process. So you need to save the status of that currently running process. You should not leave as it is. You have to have the like at that particular place you need to save, so till where which position that process is being executed. It should not start begin with from the beginning. So the current status of that previous process need to be saved, that is known as context saving. And then the process of retrieving the saved context details for a process which is going to be executed due to the CPU switching is known as context retrieval. So that means one process was running, you stopped that process and your CPU switched to execute another process, second process. So you saved the status of the first process and you started executing the second process. After some time, you want to come back to the first process. So you need to retrieve, context retrieval. You have to go back to that particular process, previous process, wherever you have stopped from that part, you need to start beginning the execution. So that process is called as context retrieval. So when it comes for the types of multitasking, so there are three types: cooperative multitasking, then preemptive multitasking, then non-preemptive multitasking. So cooperative multitasking means it's the primitive form of multitasking wherein a task or process gets a chance to execute only when the executing task or process voluntarily relinquishes the CPU. So that means when one process is in execution, another process wants to execute and it wants the CPU. So that particular task gets a chance to execute only when the executing task, that the previous task whichever is executing, voluntarily stops executing and relieves the CPU. So that time only the CPU will be given or allocated to the next process. So that is called as cooperative multitasking. So in preemptive multitasking, every task or process gets a chance to execute. That means you are going to specify the times for each process. So till that time that process gets executed, then it will get halted. So again, next time will be given to the next task, time will be allocated for the next task, and it gets its own chance for execution like that. So in preemptive multitasking, every task or process, it is going to get a chance to execute. So non-preemptive multitasking, the process or task which is currently given the CPU time is allowed to execute until it terminates or enters the blocked or wait state. So in the non-preemptive multitasking, when a process is in execution, so the currently it is going to give the CPU time, which is going to be allowed to execute until it terminates that particular process or it enters the terminates or enters the blocked or wait state. So that is called as non-preemptive multitasking. So the cooperative and non-preemptive multitasking differs in their behavior when they are in blocked or wait state. So preemptive multitasking is the better one. So you will be getting or allocating time slot for all the processes. So the next topic is task communication. So you need to communicate whenever your any task or process is running. So there should be some communication should happen between each process. So based on the degree of interaction or the processes running on an OS are classified as cooperating processes. That means one process requires the inputs from other processes to complete its execution. So that is nothing but cooperating process. Then competing process. The processes do not share anything among themselves, but they share the system resources. They compete for resources. So that kind of processes are also available. So cooperating processes exchanges information and communicate through the following methods. So in what are the methods it is going to be used for sharing the information or communicating between the processes? Cooperation through sharing. That means exchange through some shared resources. Then cooperation through communication. No data is shared, but they communicate for synchronization. So the different methods of communicating, task communication. So cooperating processes, one process requires the inputs from other processes to complete its execution. But competing processes, they do not share anything among themselves, but they share the actual system resources. They are going to compete for resources which are available. When it comes for the cooperating process, it may use two methods for sharing or exchanging the information. One is through sharing, the other one is through communication. So the cooperating process exchange data through some shared resources. Otherwise, no data is shared, but they communicate for synchronization. So that kind of things they may use for task communication. So when you use the shared memory, so processes share some area of the memory to communicate among them. Information to be communicated by the process is written to the shared memory area. So you're going to be available with this shared memory area. So this is your process 1, this is your process 2. So whatever the information this process 1 and process 2 wants to share with each other, so that kind of information will be stored in this shared memory area. So this memory area can be accessed by process 1 as well as process 2. So other processes which require this information can read the same from the shared memory area. So it is same as the real world example where you have the notice board and it is used by corporate to publish the public information among the employees. So you have a notice board. In that notice board, everything will be displayed and it is accessible by all. So that is nothing but a kind of shared memory kind of thing. So where all the processes, whatever the information is required from that particular shared memory area, can read the same information from that memory area. That is shared memory. So for that, different mechanisms are adopted by different kernels for implementing shared memory. So to use this shared memory, so kernels are going to implement this shared memory in a different methods or different mechanisms. So one method is called as pipes. So pipe is a section of the shared memory which is used by the processors for communicating purpose. So it pipe follows the client server architecture. So client server architecture means you'll be having a client and a server, a request and response kind of thing will happen in client server architecture. So this is one of the mechanism which is going to be used for sharing or communicating purpose. From one process to the other process, you want to communicate using the shared memory. So this method is going to be used. This pipe method is going to follow client server architecture. So wherein a process which creates a pipe is known as pipe server. So whichever the process creates a pipe is known as pipe server, and the process which connects to a pipe is known as pipe client. So there are two processes. One process creates a pipe. So if that process creates a pipe, it is going to be considered as pipe server. And another process connects to that pipe, which is known as pipe client. A pipe can be considered as a conduit. That means the medium for information flow, and has two conceptual ends. So there are two different types of pipes can be created. One is unidirectional pipe in the single direction, which allows the process connecting at one end of the